Hello, everyone. Welcome to class. I am so happy that you are here. Before we get started, I want us to do a self-assessment using our thumb meters to determine if we're ready to engage in class today. Remember that thumbs up means that you are here, you are ready, you want to learn, and you're feeling excited about what you might learn. Thumbs down means you would rather be almost anywhere, doing almost anything other than being in this class. And of course, you can go anywhere in between because that's how life is. So, on the count of three, let me see how you are feeling about class today. One, two, three. Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up. I'm definitely seeing some thumbs down, and I am seeing some in between, and that is okay, because what my job now is to help you find a reason to turn that thumb and start to point it a little more upright. We are going to be talking about something that is really, really important in the study of literature, and this is the idea of theme. By the time class ends today, believe it or not, you are going to be able to tell me not only what theme means, but also you're going to be able to identify a theme from the story that we're going to read today. So already we've got a goal that has been set that I personally know you are totally capable of reaching. So, if you're ready, and even if you're not, let's jump in and start talking about this idea of theme. Now, I know that you're probably feeling pretty tired because yesterday we took a virtual field trip. And we didn't just go to another location, we traveled through the course of history. And what we did was we went to the late 19th century and we saw a lot of things about life in the late 19th century. We talked about fashion in the late 19th century. We looked at homes, and some of us were really, really surprised at how much houses varied in the late 19th century. We even flew through a few houses just to see what they looked like inside. And we got laughing yesterday, didn't we, about how dusty they were as we flew through. We talked about gender roles also as we did our field trip yesterday, and we learned what was expected of each gender typically in society. We also flew through the South a little bit, and we saw that there were certain social expectations for women in the South during that time. Then we went into our learning teams, and you guys found the most fascinating information about gender roles. You found out about financial security and insecurity for women. You found out about what women were expected to do in a household, what men were expected to do. You really found some interesting stuff about ownership of property like houses. And you also found interesting information about the social status of women who worked outside the home. So, why did we do that? Why did we go back to the late 1800s? We did it because we wanted to be ready to read the story that we are focusing on today. This is The Story of an Hour by Kate Chopin. It's really not too bad. It was written in 1894. It's a short story, short enough for us to read in class today. There are only four characters. They stay together for about an hour and they never leave the house. At this time, to get ready for the rest of our lesson, you're going to need to get these materials together. You need your reading journal, you need the handout from your packet, and you need your highlighter. At this point, as students are doing that, I would also help them start to get their reading journal entry ready for today's lesson. And they would put this kind of information at the beginning of their reading journal so that they would be ready to discuss the story. I would then go through and read the story With them following, they would use their highlighters to highlight any word that they are unfamiliar with. At the end of the reading of the story, I would ask them to help me identify words that they were not familiar with, and they would then write or they would write what the words mean right into the story so that next time they read this story, they will have a better understanding of that vocabulary. Back to class. All right, guys. Well, here we are. And I know that this is how you're feeling because the ending has a bit of a surprise for us. We are now going to work on our tag team summaries, and I know you guys love that. You always do that really well. At this point, we would go into an activity that puts students into learning groups, and it would be a matter of them working with a partner to come up with a 5-sentence summary of the story, and then they would write their emotional response to the story that would be just 1 sentence. We would go from there into a general class discussion about what happens in the story. We would break it into segments, but using the same discussion questions. So we would break it up into the first part of the story, the middle part of the story, and the end of the story. We would also discuss the ending and Mrs. Mallard's death, and we would talk about the fact that we need to be able to prove things from the text in order to support what we say about a text. Back to class. All right, guys, you did a fantastic job on your summaries, and now we get to this great literary tool called theme. Now, sometimes people get confused about theme because they think it's a summary, but the theme is not a summary. In other words, it's something very different, but we might need the summary, which is what we just worked on, to understand what the theme is. The theme is really a message or a lesson. And this is what the author is working very hard through the characters, through the plot, for us to understand what they want us to say. Now we're going to focus on 2 tools today within theme to help us get better at understanding what a theme is. The first thing we're going to do is talk about something called a theme topic. This is going to be just 1 word or 2 words, and it is the main idea of a story. Now keep in mind that every story has a theme. Every book has a theme. Believe it or not, movies have themes, song lyrics have themes. Themes are everywhere. So we need to come up with 1 word or 2 words. That's it. That's the main idea of this story, the story of an hour. We might want to think about words like love, growth, human nature. Are you guys thinking about that too? At this point, I would ask students to go into their learning groups, which would be a partner, a 1-to-1 partnership with another student, and they would be pre-assigned to those partners. What they would do then would be to work on the idea of coming up with possible theme topics for the story of an hour. And here is where my screen freezes. All right, my screen has unfrozen, but what the students would do in their with their learning partners would be to come up with theme topics. From there, we would get into the discussion that there is something else where we can take this theme topic and we can move it into a full sentence called the theme statement. The students would experiment with doing that with the story of an hour. And that pretty much is where we would end our lesson for today. Now, the question that I need to address is how can I ensure that all students are having an equal opportunity to access this learning material? How can I ensure that, for example, the 3 students that were included on that list who have reading comprehension challenges would be able to get into this information and get something out of it? One of the most important things I have learned as a teacher is that students get far more out of a reading assignment if the teacher reads it and we do it together as a class. That allows me to address unfamiliar vocabulary. It allows them to hear the patterning and the intonation as I read and so forth. Another thing that I strongly believe in is the idea of using learning partners. And I have always intentionally grouped students during classes, and I try not only to mix various abilities academically or cognitively, but I also try to mix abilities personality wise. And one of the things that really can happen here is that students build confidence. For example, a student who has a reading comprehension issue would be working with a learning partner not on reading, because we've done that as a whole class, but they would be thinking, they would be talking through the issue together. At this point, no student has an advantage over another student because they are not reading, they are simply talking, they are simply engaging. What I try to face in a classroom is circulate among those groups constantly. It helps me to know where students are, it helps me to gauge what they are learning, helps me to gauge what I need to do to bring the students back into focus with the lesson. But since we're talking about virtual education, and I have done virtual groups many times through Zoom, is we go into breakout rooms and I pop into each of those breakout rooms. It allows me, again, to hear students, to engage with students, and so forth. One of the things that I love about virtual education and breakout rooms is the fact that when I jump in to a breakout room and I'm talking to those 2 students or 3 students, it's a private conversation. The rest of the class can't hear me refocus or redirect conversation. I think that by setting a class up this way, every student has an equal opportunity to access the ideas, to access the literary tools that are being used in a classroom. And I hope that I have conveyed this well enough. Thank you very much.